At one point, I had two job interviews scheduled in North Carolina. I was living in New York at the time, and instead of flying, I decided to make the long drive to save money. My current job was terrible, and either of these positions could have been the fresh start I desperately needed. Both were corporate office roles with great pay, solid benefits, and, as a bonus, warmer weather than New York. The drive was set for a Thursday night because both interviews were on Friday. I had to work during the day Thursday, so the moment I got off, I rushed home, grabbed my suitcase, said goodbye to my family, and set out. It was going to be an exhausting 8+ hour drive, with my ETA landing somewhere around 2 in the morning. I was heading to a comfort inn. In the first few hours, I downed 3 cups of coffee, which helped for a while. But when you're already running on little sleep, caffeine only gets you so far. I'd barely slept the night before from stressing over these interviews. And after an entire workday, driving nearly 9 hours was the last thing my body wanted to do. With about 2 hours left, the highway was nearly deserted. Just me and the occasional car. My eyelids were getting heavier by the minute. That's when I noticed something strange. On the side of the road stood a man in a suit. He wasn't walking or moving, just standing there, facing my car. As I passed, his head turned, following me with his eyes. "What the hell?" I muttered out loud. For a split second, I considered turning around to see if he needed help. Maybe he'd been kicked out of a car after a fight, I told myself. I used these little daydreams to keep my mind awake. But 10 minutes later, I saw another man, also in a suit, standing on the shoulder of the road, perfectly still. I slowed down, thinking I might ask if he was okay, but as I came close to a stop, I glanced in the rearview mirror, and he was gone, vanished. Heart pounding, I hit the gas and kept driving. Needing a pick-me-up, I stopped for more coffee about 90 minutes from my destination. As I sat in the rest area parking lot, I saw him again, standing under a lamppost. Same suit, same face. Middle-aged, clean-shaven, short, dark hair, expressionless, but always staring directly at my car. I left without looking back. I tried to push through, but exhaustion was hitting me hard. I pulled into a random parking lot, reclined my seat, and tried to sleep. Fear crept in, though. What if I woke up and saw him outside? I was on the verge of sleep when I suddenly opened my eyes. Everything outside was clear, until I looked into the rearview mirror. My blood turned to ice. There was someone in my back seat. I didn't think, I just screamed, threw open the door, and stumbled backward onto the pavement. But when I looked again, nothing. The seat was empty. Convincing myself it was just exhaustion playing tricks on me, I forced myself back into the car and finished the drive. By the time I got to the hotel, I collapsed into bed. The next morning, my first interview was at 11 a.m. When the interviewer walked out to greet me, I froze. He looked exactly like the man I'd been hallucinating all night. I tried to play it cool, but my nerves tanked the interview. Thankfully, my second one went much better. I got that job and still live in North Carolina today. Later, my old therapist told me the most likely explanation. Stress, anxiety, and sleep deprivation had triggered hallucinations of the man I imagined would be interviewing me. Maybe she was right, but it didn't make the night any less terrifying.
One night, I was cutting through Clearfield County, Pennsylvania, taking the back roads to avoid traffic. It was just past midnight, and the road was completely deserted, exactly how I liked it. I had a podcast playing when my car gave off a warning chime, low fuel. I plugged the nearest gas station into my maps. About 5 minutes later, I pulled into a small, nameless station, the kind surrounded entirely by woods for miles. There was just one other person there, a man filling up an old, beat-up pickup truck. He watched me closely as I passed him and went inside. I grabbed a coffee and paid cash for my gas. When I came back out, he was getting into his truck and pulling away. I didn't think much of it, until less than a minute into my drive, I saw that same truck parked on the side of the road with its lights off. It was angled toward the woods, engine quiet. I kept going, glancing in my mirror to see if he'd follow. Nothing. I turned my podcast back on. But minutes later, another alert went off, this time, my tire pressure warning. My rear driver's side tire was flat. I pulled over to check, confused because I hadn't hit anything. That's when the thought hit me, did that guy slash it? As I stood there, I heard the faint rumble of an engine from down the road, but there were no headlights. Then it went quiet. I grabbed the SOS flashlight from my trunk, something my dad had given me for emergencies, and shined it down the road. About 200 feet away, barely visible in the dark, was that same pickup truck. My stomach dropped. I bolted into the woods, crouching behind a thick bush, and called 911. While I whispered my location, the truck started up again, pulling up next to my car. A man's voice called out, "You need some help?" I didn't respond. The dispatcher told me to stay hidden and asked if I could see any weapons, but before I could answer, the call cut out, no reception. Then, another vehicle approached. It slowed, and I heard two men talking. Peeking through the branches, I saw the driver of the creepy truck standing beside another pickup stopped in the middle of the road. I overheard him spinning some story, trying to explain what was happening. That's when I took a chance. I ran out yelling, "Help! I don't know him." Both men looked at me, startled. I told the second driver that the man had slashed my tire and followed me. The stranger gave the creepy guy a disgusted look, but the man just denied everything and hurried back to his truck, backing away before speeding off. The second driver stayed with me until police arrived. I explained everything, and the officer said he'd check the gas station security footage. He stayed with me until roadside assistance arrived. Later, I never heard back from the police. No confirmation, no follow-up. I can only assume the footage didn't show anything conclusive. But to this day, I'm certain that man was planning something far worse than just slashing a tire. I'm 28, and my boyfriend Todd lives in another state. We take turns visiting each other, but I usually make the trip more often because he has his own place, and I still live with my sister. This was during winter break. As a teacher, I had the week off, so I packed my old 2009 Hyundai Sonata for a longer stay. The farther north I drove, the more snow I encountered. The car wasn't great in winter conditions, so I was being extra cautious. Earlier that day, there had been blizzard warnings, but Todd and I decided I should try to beat the storm by traveling that night. By the time I stopped at a small diner for a sandwich and coffee, snow was coming down hard. While chatting with the waitress, she told me there was no way I should keep driving and suggested a few local hotels. Then, a man at the bar swiveled his chair toward me and said, "There's a motel just 5 minutes from here. Nice and cheap." He introduced himself as Toby. I gave him a fake name, Michelle, because something about him put me off. He stayed half-turned toward me in his bar stool, clearly listening to my earlier conversation. When I left the diner, the snow was already an inch thick. I found the motel easily, small, a little run-down, but affordable. I paid about $50 for a downstairs room and went back to my car for my luggage. Inside, the room was simple: queen bed, tacky wallpaper, red carpet. No cell reception, but there was free Wi-Fi, so I decided to grab the password from the front desk. On my way, I noticed a new car in the parking lot with someone sitting inside. I didn't stop to stare, just kept walking. The desk clerk pointed to a sign with the password, and I headed back to my room. While texting Todd, I heard a noise from the bathroom. The door was closed, and I didn't remember shutting it. That's when it hit me: I'd run to the front desk without locking my room. Todd told me to check the lock, so I opened the front door to see. That's when I noticed a second set of fresh footprints in the snow, leading from that parked car directly to my door. The car was empty now. Heart racing, I shut the door and ran to the front desk, telling the clerk there was an intruder in my room. He didn't call the police, just phoned someone in another language. Minutes later, a large man arrived. The clerk said they'd move me to another room for free. As we walked outside, I saw my old room door swing open. Toby stepped out, looked straight at me, and calmly walked to his car. He drove off into the snowy night without a word. I spent the rest of the night in the new room, barely sleeping. The next morning, the roads were clear enough to make it to Todd's. Looking back, I'm still disturbed that the motel clerk didn't involve the police. That night taught me something: I will never fully trust a stranger again, especially one who offers help out of nowhere.